Start the recording. So I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. And as usual, we have an exciting evening and an evening of great information, an evening of, last month, our visitors on the line that, well, actually, I think they get it every month, but last month, they really got sort of a college education sort of information last month. And so, we're excited to have you all join us today, and excited for Marybeth to share with us this day what she had with us. And we're going to talk about nitrogen. How are you, Marybeth?
Oh, pretty good. Just the cat's visiting periodically. So I'll try not to get too distracted. But yeah, it's, gardening season. So it all hits at once up here, and you just better be ready.
Yeah.
It's a lot going on.
Well, thank you so much. As you know, this is on the line with us, the great Marybeth Sanchez. And, she has a wealth of knowledge about horticulture and agriculture and, soil biology. She's taken collegiate courses on the subject, and she grew up actually a farmer's daughter. So, being a farmer's daughter, you can't help but know about farming. And so
You got to pick up something.
Yeah, you got to pick up something. And so I'm just excited to hear what she has to share with us this evening. My name is Earl. I'm part of this great team of the amazing Dr. Zymes. And if you don't know Dr. Zymes, it's a revolutionary green solution manufacturer that produce socially and environmentally responsible products of the highest quality. And our flagship product happens to be the great 100% all natural, all-in-one eliminator insecticide and fungicide. But we're not here to talk about the eliminator insecticide and fungicide. We're here to educate you on how to be a better grower, how to increase yield, how to just all around be a better grower and do it in an organic, socially, environmentally safe way. But you're not here to hear me talk. So what I'm going to do is let Marybeth take over, but definitely stay until the end, because we are going to have a chance to open up the floor for you to ask Marybeth questions. And you may even raise your hand and talk to her personally. You can raise your hand. I may even open up the mic so you can speak with her. But without further ado, I hand you over to the great Marybeth Sanchez. I just the great Marybeth Sanchez.
Oh, you flatter me.
There's a ring to it, doesn't it? The great Marybeth.
Yes, it sounds pretty awesome, Earl. I hope I don't let anybody down over here. For sure. I'm not sure. I don't see the screen sharing thing. Do you?
Let me make you post.
Okay, hang on a second. Hang on, everybody. We can do this. Mercury's only just coming out of retrograde now. So. So let's see. Okay, so it's host, but I don't see, where does it stop participate? Oh, here it is. Earl, Jesus, my brains are rusty. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Our advanced sharing. Huh? Oh no, they changed their thingy here. Okay. Lordy, Earl, I don't know that this is working. Oh, shoot.
They changed the settings on your side?
God, it doesn't say what it used to say. It used to be, yeah, I could just turn up the thing and share. Continue. Hello. Let us pray. Oh, look, I think there's maybe hope. Let's keep trying. Okay. Everybody hold your breath, say your prayer to your favorite, what have you, and maybe this will work. Okay, are we on my screen now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, nitrogen deep dive. Let's see if I can make this thing work. And okay, does this look right to you? We got the big bulletin blackboard up here.
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, I think we're gonna make it. All righty. Well, if you're going to talk about nitrogen, let's just get on to the thing here. And I would be remiss if I didn't bring up immediately the cute little nitrogen cycle charts, which you can find plenty of everywhere. And I'm sure you've probably all seen something like this, but it is the little way to remind you of the different types of nitrogen and how they are working in the soil, how they move from one level to another and change from one form to another via, plants and animals decaying matter. And the atmospheric nitrogen is where it all starts, but that is a thing that is, really unobtainable by plants until it either gets, we'll get into it, thunder, lightning, snow, and the denitrifying, the nitrifying bacteria. There's another bacteria that denitrifies, and that returns that nitrogen that the other guys created back to the atmosphere, where it once again becomes the same nitrogen that it was before, and it is quite difficult to obtain for the plants in that form. So anyway, we're going to get into how the plants eventually do get to it, but nitrogen being what it is, a very essential part of the protein. Everybody needs nitrogen, not only the plants, every animal. We all need a certain amount of it. And so, if you are lacking in it, you're definitely going to be noticing in your plants at any stage of their existence. I know they need a lot less of it when they're maturing, but they don't ever need none of it. So we want to make sure when you are getting them the nitrogen, that you're getting it to them in the right form and you're getting it to them in the right quantities, because I'm sorry, Earl, I'm seeing up there, it says 2 people in the waiting room. I don't know if you can see that, but I don't even know if you're seeing that on my screen or not. But anyway, there are 5 different types of nitrogen, and only 2 of them are really plant available, and that's the ammonium and the nitrate. And the ammonium is really only available to, like, but the trees that you're seeing there, the conifers and the old forest kind of plants. The shrubberies maybe sometimes, but mostly it's like evergreen type things in old growth. They like ammonium type species types of nitrogen, whereas nitrate is by almost every other plant, is the kind that they're going to want to get. But sometimes when you go into a store, you're going to see a package that says ammonium sulfate, and you'll think, well, that's the stuff, but it's really more for a different kind of plant than what most of us are growing, as our vegetables and what have you. So anyway, we're going to get on to the little more details here in the nitrogen cycle and how it's formed, et cetera, et cetera. Starting off in the atmosphere is your regular plain old nitrogen, just 2 little nitrogen molecules so tight together that takes thunder and lightning to break it apart. Except in the 1900s, early 1900s, somebody named Haber and somebody named Bosch got together and did this weird process where they are able to now create synthetically derived atmospheric nitrogen. They are able to take the atmospheric nitrogen and convert it into a fertilizer in a bag that you go buy in the store. And that's where most of the nitrogen that's out there in, we want to call salt form, that's where it's coming from. It's the stuff that the Haber-Bosch made. But if you want to use your nitrogen cycling and get it from the plants and the animals and the things that are decomposing, your bacteria and your such that needs to work on that and convert it. And they are actually able to convert it from atmospheric nitrogen into first the want to say nitrites, or no, first the ammonium and then into nitrites, into nitrates. Okay, the bacteria, the rhizobia, the frankia, the azobacters, they work on it in more than one process to get it to the point where there's some plant available stuff going on. And if the plants don't all consume it, it gets washed away into these streams and into the what do you want to call, say, aquifers and things. So we don't ever want to over apply nitrogen if there's any way we can help it. It's the fastest and easiest leaching nutrient. So it's really easy if you put on too much for it to get into places where you really would have preferred it didn't go. And especially if you're paying for it, you really don't want to waste it.
Marybeth, before
Okay.
you continue on, let me reclaim the host, and then we'll share host.
Thank
That
you.
that way I'll be able to see who's in the waiting room in a minute.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Okay. So now let me share host with you again. So you'll be
Okay. We're just rusty people. Bear with us. We're good at many things, but not techie.
okay. So you should have shared host access.
Okay. You're still seeing my screen, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, dokie. So the other ways that nitrogen is lost to us is various ways is liming, for one thing. That's when you're usually trying to make your soil more acidic. It can, you can overdo that, and that can cause your nitrogen to turn back into a gas and go back into the atmosphere. Irrigation runoff, as we just mentioned a minute ago, erosion in the soil. That's definitely going to take away any nutrients that are in it, and particularly nitrogen. Harvest plant removal of nitrogen-rich materials. That would be just harvesting. You're taking away things. If you're not putting anything back, and your soil is looking like this picture here in the lower right-hand corner, yeah, you're going to have to be adding nitrogen every time you want to plant something. And you're going to have to plow every time you want to plant something. It's just like, boy, I hope you're not treating your soils like that. I hope nobody here soils like that. But if you do have a healthy soil, it will survive all these nightmares much more better. But low oxygen conditions will also remove nitrogen from your soil. It will return back into the gas, go back off into the atmosphere. And low oxygen in your soil would be an anaerobic condition where your plant wouldn't be too healthy anyway. In most cases, very few plants like a really anaerobic conditions. There are some, but very few. Okay, so the other things that can happen to your nitrifying bacteria is if you're relying on them, they pretty much slow down and go to sleep when your temperatures get below 41 Fahrenheit or 5 centigrade. And so you may be trying to grow during that time, but it's kind of not seeming to be doing anything, but it's because they're really having a hard time taking up any nutrients in those colder temperatures. And the bacteria and things, they don't want to move either. They're all kind of wanting to go into their dormant, just, sit around and wait period. And of course, you get your maximum activity between 85 and 95 Fahrenheit, which I'll say 29, 35 centigrade. That's when you're going to have your nitrifying happening a lot faster. So, you have to be aware of what's happening when your temperature changes. You're going to be, different amounts are going to be released to your plants. So different things can happen. You might wonder why it was okay at that rate before, and now suddenly it looks like something's going wrong. So nitrifying bacteria, as we said before, prefer the moist, loose, well-drained soil. You don't want a compacted soil where air and water aren't circulating nicely, because you're going to be losing your, in the form of ammonia, your nitrogen is going to go back into the air again and become just N2 again. So like we said before, forest crops are the ones that prefer the ammonium, and it is there for them, and that's great. But your regular plants, your vegetables and fruits and cannabis and what have you, is going to definitely want the nitrate form. And that is hopefully what you're using already. But, regardless of that, you don't ever want to apply too much. And there's ways that you can be applying just what it says on the package and actually be overdosing and not realize it because of, little things that can happen. So the trouble with cold, wet, acidic soils, okay, that is what we spoke of before. Liming would be acidifying your soil. It will inhibit these things. Nitrifying bacteria are inhibited by these conditions. So the conversion from ammonium to nitrates is very slow in these conditions. You don't want this kind of soil. You want to warm it up somehow, get the drainage better somehow. And this will help the nitrifying bacteria do their job better and get your plants what they need when they need it. And they will, like I said before, lose some to the atmosphere due to the denitrifying bacteria which thrive in the oxygen poor soils. And so if you just keep adding nitrogen to cold, wet soils, it just kind of gets worse and worse. So, you know, be thinking about that if you're looking to your plant and wondering why it's not doing good. It's more likely because of the cold and wet, not because of the lack of nitrogen. It's just because of that. It's not really taking things up. So there you go. Like it says here, oxygen levels tend to be low in acidic, cold, wet soils. Okay, Austin Ron is here. Yay, okay. The role of nitrogen in plant pathology. So you may have noticed that aphids will come around no matter what you do, but boy, if you're adding an excessive amount of nitrogen, you get more aphids than the average plant does. And if you want to have a banker plant that hogs all the aphids, give it plenty of nitrogen and it'll attract plenty of aphids. Not only aphids, but most of these small sucking insects, and well, probably most of the plant eating insects are very attracted to that nitrogen because, like I said, it's what we all need to live. So they're all ultimately looking for nitrogen, sugar, some forms of things like that. And so one of the worst things that people tend to do when they're having plants that are small and they want to get them big fast, they start adding a lot of nitrogen quickly. And it looks like the plants are growing and looking healthy. And you go, well, I don't think this is too bad. This might be great. And next thing you know, they've got aphids, or they've got russet mites, or they've got scale, or different things. Powdery mildew is easier to get when you add too much nitrogen. It weakens your plant overall. It makes it harder for the plant to take in its calcium and to use it properly. So all the cell walls are weaker when you use too much nitrogen. And it also tends to cause the roots of the plant to rot. And get mushy black roots, you know, nothing's going to go right that way. So you have to, like I say, be very careful with the amount of nitrogen that you're putting in, but also remember that there's the hidden nitrogens that you don't necessarily realize that what's going on. For instance, so many of us like to grow organic and have living soils and things like that, where they've got a certain amount of nutrients added, but you always want to add more. We always want to give it a little something, a little boost up and such. But you just, the worm castings alone can increase your nitrogen that's in your soil by 5 times. And if you see the way that worm castings, and according to this little list here, can increase the available nutrients in your soil by quite a bit. It's easy to see how, if you following the directions on the packaging or whatever and thinking, well, I'm just adding an appropriate amount, but not realizing that your worms are turning it into perhaps 10 times the potassium, 5 times the nitrogen, 7 times the phosphorus. Gee whiz, that's, you know, you're besides the fact that you might not be considering the decomposing nitrifying plants that may be growing near it. Suppose you had your cover crops were leguminous plants with the rhizobia in it that are decomposing from the roots and the nodules and things. So that's adding extra nitrogen to your soil, that on top of whatever you might be putting in. So there's ways that even though you think you're not really adding that much nitrogen, lo and behold, surprise, you actually end up getting more nitrogen than you should have, which is going to end up being a problem because your plants don't mature when you have too much nitrogen. Okay, mycorrhizal fungus, that's another thing that if you're growing with, which most of us recommend and practice, that's going to deliver up to 25% of your available nitrogen. Should be getting a lot more nitrogen to your plant if you're using mycorrhizal fungus than if you're not, and wouldn't necessarily be assumed by the person who is creating that fertilizer that you may be using, you know, to give yourself your extra boost. This is just a picture of an azobacter because they're just so cute. And all these are the ones that are free living in the soil, that are hopefully in your soil, and they just are looking for a chance to play with some N2 and turn it into something that plants like. And these are the ones that are called rhizobia. They're the ones that live inside the nodules, like in particular your legumes and what have you. A lot of different plants in that family, even trees, will have nodules on their roots. And They actually, when you cut them open, they do look like, it looks like blood in there. It's the same stuff that hemoglobin that we have in our blood. But it's nitrogen, just like your blood. Another way you can, well, okay, I should show you what I'm looking at here is these picture of roots with the nodules on it. Okay, so you can see if you cut these little nodules open, you would see that they have kind of pinkish red insides, which is the hemoglobin, the nitrogen that is stored in there, which the plant is using for itself until you kill the plant off and leave the root in the ground. Then when that root is decomposing, then that nitrogen is finally released for the neighbor's plants. It's not being released for the neighboring plants while that plant's still growing and alive, okay? But if you really want that nitrifying bacteria in your soil and you're not sure if you've got it, you can buy this pond stuff. This same thing is the same bacteria. You can do this to add some to your soil if you think that for whatever reason you are not getting the kind of nitrification that you should be having in your, particularly if organic soil or your outdoor soil for some reason. And you can buy these commercial preparations. There is more than one available. I don't know the names of all of them, but these are free living bacteria that are living in soil if you're lucky. And if they're not, you buy this stuff and you add it to your soil. And you know, it doesn't take much really, because it's assumed it's going to be multiplying in your soil and growing. Okay, so nitrogen being a mobile nutrient means it likes to get up and go and run to the furthest outposts of the territory, and that's your plant. So that's why when you have a nitrogen deficiency, and if there's not enough nitrogen, it's going to want to go to the furthest outposts, and that would be your growing tips. But it'll leave your older leaves just turning yellow and looking dead, and pretty much they kind of go all over yellow. It's not so much between the veins as it's just they get yellower and yellower. It's well, anyway, you'll see if it's happening. But anyway, it does move to where it's needed. And so the deficiency will show only up at the bottom leaves. If it's yellow all over, you've been waiting for too long to take care of that problem. So anyway, if you have too much nitrogen, then you're going to notice that your plant leaves are really green, super green. You'll probably be getting burned tips, and your tips of your plants will start to curl and burn. And it gets so bushy and lovely. But the next thing that happens is you don't get any fruit. And if you get any fruit or flowers, they just don't mature. Too much nitrogen will keep you in forever Peter Pan. You'll never become fully mature. Okay, and excess nitrogen also can be an environmental disaster. So really, you know, for the sake of your pocketbook and for the sake of the environment, just try to remember that you may not need anywhere near as much as you might think you need, because it just sounds good. When you see that plant go boom, 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 it's kind of like blowing up a balloon. Gets thinner and thinner walls. The more you blow it, it gets bigger and bigger, but it's weaker and weaker the more you blow it up. It's really not a healthy growth. And in certain crops, particularly root crops, nitrogen does. I hope you can see these pictures. They're very cute, adorable little carrots and things, but it's not usually what you want to see. It's not the commercially really adorable kind of situation. Anyway, this is what happens. And what also will happen is that those hairs, or the root hairs that are all over your root crops, will become really prolific. So they, you know, you kind of call them hairy. They look like they need a shave. It's really kind of interesting looking, but it's not good. And you know, like I said, too much nitrogen, not cool. And down here in the corner, that's just a picture of with and without oxygen in the soil. We already talked about that. The ways that we lose our nitrogen is when we don't have good air circulation in the soil. So anyway, like we mentioned earlier, too much nitrogen will reduce your flowering altogether, and your plants will grow and grow. And people will notice this with their tomatoes, and they'll be very happy that their tomatoes are getting so big. Well, I'm not getting any flowers, you know, I don't get it. And you'll also find that if you do get a flower, it'll fall off or it won't mature because you're not getting, your calcium isn't being uptaken properly because of the excessive nitrogen. So the excess nitrogen will just cause the plant to stretch too much, be too weak, it have thin walls, elongate your internodal spacings where, most of us want those to be a little shorter, more dense. And it just delays your maturity. Really, in life, we all want the flowers and the fruit ultimately. So try not to make your plant turn into Jolly Green Giant and then flip to flower, because sometimes you're kind of creating a monster that can fall apart on you. And excessive nitrogen, like I said, is going to probably attract a whole lot of pests that you're not going to want to fight with. And the plant's going to have a hard time fighting because it's going to be weak and thin-walled, and you could easily rot your roots. Really seeing a lot of plants with rotten roots recently, and I'm wondering if part of it's maybe excessive nitrogen inviting pathogenic funguses. Things are just going bad. It tends to snowball. Okay, this is the lovely picture of a nodule of legume cut open. So you can see that the inside of it does look a lot like meat. It just looks like fleshy and pink in there. And it basically is the same thing that's in our blood. And so, like we said before, atmospheric nitrogen, that's your N2 form, is always in the air, but you got to do crazy powerful things like lightning to get it out, or the Haber-Bosch method, which, very energy intensive method to get artificially created nitrogen in the nitrate form. So there's these sequestered in biology forms. You got to remember what's growing in your outside environment, what's near you, what has been mowed down, what isn't going to have a problem with decaying nodules of nitrogen. And the rhizobia in your soil, or the Frankia, the actinomycetes, they are also nitrogen fixers in your soil. So it's a really important thing. And I just keep on bringing this home and hammering it over and over so that you won't forget. There's more nitrogen in your soil than you realize. There's more than you're just putting in on your box. There's more than what it says on your package of soil that you bought with something already included. A lot of soils include a certain amount of food in them, especially when you're potting up. It's always nice to have that. But, when we start adding more and more, we like it, particularly with the earthworms and things, we don't necessarily realize how much more we're actually adding. And we're thinking, oh, you're doing everything right, but somehow things are going wrong. And this is where it can happen sometimes, because too much of even a good thing can turn into a bad thing, right? So in different kinds of fertilizers that you're using, I don't have the exact numbers here, but in animal manures, the nitrogen level tends to be really low. The only exception is probably the manures of chicken, birds, that, fowl manure tends to have a high nitrogen content. And kind of maybe not comparable to, if you're lucky, you might have like a 2 or 3 or something in your nitrogen on a chicken or whatever. But alfalfa meal and feather meal and blood meal, they're usually going to have close to 12%, approximately 12% or more. The alfalfa meal is maybe not quite that high, but that's pretty high. That's going to really, you don't want to overdo those. It's going to be plant available right away. You'll notice immediately if your nutrient is deficient in nitrogen. If you put on a little blood meal or feather meal, green. So anyway, synthetics, they can be very high. They can be ridiculously high. If you go to a store that sells synthetic nutrients, Jesus, the nitrogen level sometimes, I'll show you in the next slide or so. But in decaying plant matter, which you're going to have if you're composting or whatever, if it's just dropping in your soil and dying, that's going to vary depending on when it died and what it went through and what kind of plant it is. So that's not always going to be high or low, but you'll figure that out as you go. here's the other problem of, when you have too much nitrogen or too much fertilizer in general in the soil, when it runs off, like we said, it can be a terrible environmental disaster. And you really don't want to be the person who's causing this to happen downstream. It's easy to do. And particularly people are just unaware that their plant doesn't really need that much. We just tend to, as humans, we want to kill them with kindness, and we just can't help ourselves. But, try to restrain yourself. Try to realize, particularly like the picture in the bottom, if you're trying to grow any root crops, the last thing that they want is nitrogen, because all you're going to have is the greens on top, and your root production is going to be pretty low. That's why you don't want to have a lot of nitrogen applied. If you're trying to take clones, you want to cut out the nitrogen for a couple of weeks before doing clones, because too much nitrogen is going to slow down root production. Okay, so here's what I was talking about with the synthetic forms of derived nitrogen, and how these numbers are so high, and what you're expected to do with these is to use very little over a huge amount of area. But still, most growers will buy stuff like this and not really know what they're doing, and just kind of start throwing it around. And I've seen people just do scary things to their plants when they weren't really sure how they were going to respond to very high numbers on fertilizer. If anything is over a 12, you could start being suspicious if you're growing organically. 12, 12, 12, you're probably the highest numbers you can possibly get in an organic garden. But I have seen like sometimes potassium up to 20. It says it's organic. I'm not the one doing the testing, I'm not sure. But yeah. Organic and low numbers are definitely going to serve you better for most anybody in the plant growing world. These, even when you want that high 6, whoo, you're doing good. Remember, if you've got other creatures in the soil, they are going to increase that amount. So it won't be just that 6. It'll be whatever the earthworms were adding to it, or the other little things. So less is more with nitrogen. Okay, try to restrain yourselves. The plant will grow. It's so hard to be patient. I'm not a patient person myself. I can completely relate to that. But it does work only in conjunction with the other nutrients. You do have to have a balanced diet for your plants, and everything is kind of like that spinning plate. Somebody made the analogy once, and I really loved his analogy. Stephen Reisner, I think it was. He made the analogy that your nutrients, it's like a person with spinning a plate on a stick that he's balancing on a stick. And if even one of those nutrients on the plate is out of balance, it's going to fall. So really, it's important and it's easier in organics in some way, but in other ways, if you're, it can be just as tricky as anything else. And I've seen people have real deep confusion for these things that a lot of it I take for granted, which is, my fault. So I'm assuming things. So anyway, what we want to say is, use your nitrogen with care and caution. Make sure you're getting the correct form of nitrogen. Don't use nitrogen to excess, because any excess is going to go washing right out. And you paid for that. Okay, so try to find balanced fertilizers. Balanced numbers are going to work better. I know it's hard for people because they want more, especially for the flowering. And I do the same thing. I give them more for the flowering, but I wait till they're really asking for it and they really need it. And that later in flowering, I will add more phosphorus and potassium if I want to give it that extra kick. But avoid excessive salts in your soil, particularly if you're trying to grow organic and you want things to be balanced and happy. Consider composting your nutrients to avoid runoff. So if you're into making compost or compost tea, this is a way to take your salt nutrients, your things that are going to flush away in a heartbeat, and put them in your compost pile, and let your bacteria and your etc. take them up into their bodies in the compost pile. And that way, when you water them into or the soil, when they get watered in, as you may use your compost as a mulch, or you may make tea out of it. Either way, once it gets into the soil, it's in the bodies of the bacteria, etc. And it's not going to run off with the water. So when those bacteria and things get watered in, they don't get washed away. They hang on tight to the soil particles. So unless your soil, yes, you're washing all of your soil away, hopefully you're not doing that, you shouldn't have any loss of nutrients and runoff if you compost your nutrients and then apply that compost to your plants. It actually works. And I include this just to remind people that in order to get the most from their nutrients, they should always be applying humic acids along with whatever soil medium you're using, including cocoa. So what the humic acids do is chelation, and chelation takes the worry out of feeding, because when your nutrients are chelated, which the humic acid it's nature's chelator, and it chelates all of your minerals in the soil in just seconds. It keeps you from having overdoses and underdoses, and normally your plants won't take up the nutrients it doesn't need if they're chelated. And if it does need them and they're chelated, it will take them up, and it's able to take them up more efficiently. So this is why I say really important to have good humic acids, and good humic acids are the kind that are from freshwater deposits. They're not from coal or lignite or leonardite. All of those things are okay once they've been in the soil for 6 months, but they aren't going to be good until after they've been in the soil for 6 months. So a lot of times people will buy those cheaper humic acids because they're so much cheaper, but they don't realize they're not going to be working for you for another 6 months. So they're kind of disappointed, and what's happening doesn't seem to be happening for them. That's not going to happen until you get the kind that is immediately available, which is from the freshwater deposits, or actually you can get it from saltwater deposits too, but just don't be getting it from sources that most packaging you'll see will say derived from leonardite or from lignite or from sub-bituminous coal. And it's all the same thing by different names. So look for really well-made humic acids, which in fact you don't have to buy at all. If you make compost, you can leach your own humic acid right out of your compost, just as simply as putting a bucket under say a pillowcase or whatever full of compost, and just slowly let the water leach through it. It's just a matter of slow leaching. The water that leaches through is full of humic acids. That's all that you need. You don't have to spend a fortune. If you can't find the good stuff, make your own. Hopefully you've got a good friend with compost, okay? So last but not least, I want to mention the best sources for nitrogen are going to be your natural sources, such as your chicken manure, your rabbit manure and such. But you want to let them age. You don't ever want to use them fresh. They're too hot when they're fresh. Animal manure is okay. Human manure is usually not recommended because of pathogen potential. Probably a lot of prejudice, but you know, that's entirely up to you. If you compost human manure, it needs to be composted a lot longer. It's more tricky than just your regular stuff. But hey, chicken manure, rabbit manure, you know, if you don't raise your own, maybe you've got friends that do, and you can collect these things, and they're wonderful in the garden. So with that said, that's the nitrogen deep dive. And if anybody has any questions, I will happily answer anybody's questions.
Thank you so much, Marybeth, as usual, for that wonderful information. Such a deep dive into nitrogen. When it comes to fertilizers, do you, let's say if you compost, if you do composting, can you just do composting only and just do away with all of your other additives, if you will?
Oh, you can if you're good at it. No, it's going to take a little bit of time, and you know, we're not all right away fabulous, but yes, ultimately a really good compost, you don't need to add any additional kind of fertilizers at all. Your plants should be able to get everything they need from a good compost, just because the nutrients will be recycled, the nutrients that were already in there. just kind of like how a forest works. You know, the nutrients are being recycled all the time.
Yeah.
And nobody goes in there and feeds anything. It's just decomposing and being turned back into the same nutrients they were used for the plants before.
Great, great. Well, yeah, the floor is definitely open for questions. If you want to raise your hand and talk to Marybeth personally, ask your question, that's fine. But I see we have a question that came in from Dave Kennedy. If too much nitrogen, will flushing be advised?
Oh yeah, definitely. And you can flush with just water, but it's really best to, when you're flushing, to not go completely barren of nutrients, you know. So what people usually will recommend is to add something to the water that's really, really light and weak in nutrients, such as liquid kelp or something to that effect. Something with, you know, less than 1% of any nutrient in it, just so that your plants will be getting something. But you know what happens when you're overfeeding things, things go wrong. Nitrogen, thankfully, though, is the fastest leaching. So usually just some water. Uh-oh, something's funny going on. But hopefully we can fix that. Yeah, just water. And if not, water with a little liquid kelp or seaweed in it, or maybe water with a little cow mag in it, something like that would make. Sometimes people use Epsom salt, a little bit of Epsom salt when they're flushing their nitrogen. So that will help.
Okay, cool. Thank you for answering that question. We have a hand raised from Holly Beecher. And so,
hello.
Yeah.
Hello, Holly.
Go ahead. Okay.
Hello. I just, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine. Thank you.
Okay. I just do house plants. I got some of your product for rooting house plant. But what I was trying to do was grow plantain and nettles on the inside of the house. And I know there are weeds, but I live in a city, and you know what they do with weeds. So I was trying to get my own. And I took some classes, but I'm not a farmer at all. So I don't even know how to start, start the seeds. So
well, with those plants, you know, it's not going to take much trouble at all, because they'll grow in the worst kind of conditions. So if you're giving them any kind of pampering, they're probably going to just go crazy for you. But I know that they're really good, though, at bringing nutrients from out of the soil, from soil that looks really crappy. It'll bring nutrients from deep down up to the top, and it'll be in their leaves. So if you're going to compost with it, or to do some medicinal thing with it, and you just want those nutrients up, that those plants work good for it. Then, I mean, the stinging nettle is famous for being medicinal health plant, and the plantain as well. But, and when you're saying plantain, I'm thinking of like the little weed, not like the banana kind of thing, right? We're talking about the same little,
right, the little weed.
Yeah, this is really good for bringing up nutrients from deep in the soil. So it's a good thing for you to be growing that. Now, the thing is, if you're growing those, they're not going to want you to put mycorrhizal fungus in. They're going to be against anything fungal, but you can give them all the bacterial stuff that you want, and they're going to really love. If you, and worms might be great in there too. Worms might really, because worms, they like bacterial soils too. So they could be helpful in, you know, keeping your nutrients cycling really nicely for you without you having to add a lot of things. You could probably really thrive easily.
I
Give them a little bit of space, you know.
Space.
Well, you know, you want a big pot or something. So the biggest pot you can put them in, or if you're going to put them into pots, or, you know, if they're going to go outdoors, give them as much space as you can.
Okay.
But even poor soil, you know, they will thrive. That's the neat thing about these things, is they're not real particular about the soil. Everything's going to want to have some drainage if it's going to do better. You know, you don't want to have things without drainage.
Thank you so much, Holly, for that question. Very much. That was a great question. We also have a question from Gigi. how helpful is it to add nutrients to worm bins?
Well, I kind of don't know if you really need to, because what we went over before is how much their mere existence multiplies the nutrients that you may be adding to your potted plants or whatever, your plants that are growing in the soil there. And what I would do, like I mentioned before, is, if you have a compost pile, I would put nutrients into the compost pile and let all of the biology in the compost pile take that up. And that way it gets out to the plants once you put that compost out on your plants, either in the form of mulch or tea. But
Great.
like I say, eventually you shouldn't need to feed anymore if you get that system going. And, usually it takes about, 3 to 5 years before you're really set to where you don't have to get outside inputs anymore. It's not this, it's going to be an overnight conversion when, if you've been growing the traditional way for ever so long, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for answering that question. And thank you, Gigi. We appreciate that question.
Yeah.
We have a hand raised from Jason. Let me open up the ask Jason to unmute himself and ask his question.
Yes. My question is, I have a couple of banana plants that are starting to fruit, and I would like to know what kind of fertilizer would be good for them.
Oh, right now you want potassium and phosphorus, but more potassium than anything else. But
Okay.
like this, don't fall for the crazy numbers. Don't go over 20. Okay, 20% on your potassium. But yeah, your bananas are gonna love that. And this is the time when plants are getting into fruiting and flowering and they're getting close to maturity like that. What they're going to be craving most of all is going to be potassium and phosphorus. And I know we like to push the phosphorus more, but it turns out potassium is a lot more important. And you know that in bananas, that's a really big thing that they're famous for. So they're going to want it, and they're going to collect it, and they're going to and if you compost them, you're going to have a really great source of potassium in your compost pile too.
Okay, cool.
I don't know what your ultimate plan is, but yeah, that I'm jealous. I can't grow anything like that up here where I live. It's
well, I have like quite a few.
Great.
Yeah. So they just keep I'm just gonna let them grow because I have a nice area for them. So it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna let them do their thing.
Yay! Sweet. Well, hey, send pictures someday.
Yes,
we like bananas. Cool.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thanks for the good question.
Yeah.
All right.
Very much so. Thank you, Jason. We really appreciate that question there. And don't forget to send those pictures. Let us know how those bananas.
Yeah.
Yes, I will.
But yeah, the floor is still open. If we have any more questions, feel free to type it in the chat, or give us a hand raise, and we'll open up the mic for you and talk to Marybeth yourself there. But as usual, though, Marybeth, she gives so much detailed information. Often there's not many questions at the end, but if you do have
good questions today. Thank you all.
Great questions. As you
thanks to Walking Greens for that lovely comment. Thank you. That's sweet.
As usual, our family participants, they usually come with great questions there.
Yeah.
You can tell that they are passionate about their seed sowing and harvesting.
Yeah, and we people who love plants, we're obsessed, and we can't help ourselves. So yeah, feel free to ask questions about any kind of plants, because if I don't know, I'll just tell you. What can I do?
And we too are passionate about seed sowing and harvesting, and not only that, we're passionate about organic growing. We're passionate about the health of your body. We're passionate about the health of the environment and this earth, and so that's one of the reasons why Eliminated was established, because of all the pesticides and harmful chemicals that's out there that run off into our streams and lakes and creeks, and that when we spray on our food and our consumables, it also gets into our bodies. And so, we're great advocates of being healthy and having a healthy body, having a healthy earth, having a healthy environment. And so we appreciate you taking the time out to be part of our family. And we definitely want to invite you back again for next time.
Oh, just before we go, one quick question. Tangerine trees that are 2 years old, as if you mean nitrogen, give them just minimal amounts. Trees need to be watered once once a month until, excuse me, once a week until they are established. Then about once a month during the dry season only, they should be established. But they like acidic if they are citrus trees, so give them acid food. Okay, I hope I answered that question. I hope that was it.
Suspicious of outsiders.
Thank you for protecting the boy,
Uh-oh,
but I'm
What's
afraid
that?
your actions might make things worse.
How could they
are
get
you
any?
hearing what I'm hearing?
Fighting back is never done
Here, but we
trouble.
had a
What
little.
has running away ever done for us?
It's kept us alive.
Maybe it's time we stayed and defended ourselves.
Have someone
Will you help us?
unmuted, but I just found the mute button for them. But and I think I, in the process, muted Marybeth as well. So unmute yourself, Marybeth.
Okay. Comic relief. We gotta have comic relief
Like
now,
you should.
everybody.
Get them to
Oh,
agree
okay.
to let you stay.
Your captain would be willing to do that.
There we are again.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's an interesting day, everybody. I love y'all.
Yeah, definitely. We love you all, and thank
We'll
you.
do it again soon, next month.
Next month, same bat time, same bat channel.
Amen. Thank you. I'll see you later.
Take care, you all. See you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.